McGregor called his comeback the greatest comeback in combat sports history. That's interesting, right? It's not like we need to hold him to something, but what if we were trying? What if I was really trying to take him at his word and then deduce how serious those words are? So, the reason you would come to Chael is because Google bores you. That's the reason you would come to me. If you wanted a history lesson, you could go and do research and bring Google into it, or you could just have access to me. I am a historian and I have an incredible mind. If you come to me and you ask me, will this be the greatest comeback in sports history? What do you mean by the word greatest? It certainly will not be the biggest. It won't be the biggest and it won't be the most impressive. Now, the reason for that is it lacks the ingredients. When the greats have come back, they came back into something great. So when Lance Armstrong came back, he came back onto a team in the Tour de France. When Chael Sonnen came back, he came back at the World Trials, which led to the World Championships, right? Like there was no fat on the bone. This is how I'm proving I'm back. If you come back in a bike ride, well, that's not where you left. So you're not back. I mean, do you understand the difference? If you come back in the national championship in a bike ride, that isn't where Lance left. So Lance has not returned if he returns in a bike ride. If Chael Sonnen enters the takedown tournament, that's not where he left. So coming back to the takedown tournament is not a return. And I bring that to you because in combat sports history is when guys return and they do record things. They fight for championships. They fight the top guys. They fight a nemesis where they left off, hence returning. There is nothing about Conor's return and taking on Michael Chandler that has to do with Conor's exit well over 2 years ago. They just weren't jawing at each other. They just weren't in each other's crosshairs. I'm not 100% sure that Michael Chandler was with the organization. I believe that he was and he had one fight, but I'm not 100% sure. So, what do we do with it? And the only thing that we know that isn't done is an agreement for those two to fight. We don't know anything, guys. Conor's statement yesterday was dishonest. I'm not calling Conor a liar. He set out to spoof us. He had filmed it well in advance. He dropped it on New Year's. Like this wasn't meant to be news. So why are we taking it as such? We know they are not going to compete at 185 pounds. For sure, we know that is not going to happen. So why do we believe that Conor Chandler, competing under unified rules as set forth by the Associated Boxing Commission president, Mr. Mike Mazzulli, why do we believe all of those things are so? There is no main event for UFC 300 that is in April. So why would we believe that there is a main event on a card that's 2 cards after the card that's the latest card that we've had announced that we don't have a main event for? There's nothing about the story that is reasonable. There's nothing about the story that can be proven. There's nothing about the story that is written down. I'm talking about in the form of a contract or a bout agreement. Conor has not signed to fight Michael Chandler on June 29th at 185 pounds. That's not true. Conor has not been offered paperwork to fight Michael Chandler at any weight class, in any fashion, in any venue on June 29th. Michael Chandler has not been presented with paperwork or an offer. There is no agreement in place, even verbal, for him to stand opposite Conor McGregor inside the octagon at a main event in T-Mobile at 185 pounds. It's not true. So, what happens when it is? Right? What happens when it is true? You're going to have, from a marketing standpoint, something called an on sale. Now, if you're the UFC marketing team, you can either come out and fight Conor when he said that this is what's going to happen. You can come out and fight him, or you can just go, oh, God, Dana, can we just get that fight done? Can we just make it happen? It's going to cost us $10 million and way too many hours to run back the false information that Conor put out. And once we do that, it doesn't just solve it for one event. Every single event going forward, we're going to have a level of confirmation if our athletes continue to lie. So can you either make that fight and get tickets on sale, or do you want me to come over the top and let them know, hey, it's not true? Because what happens when it does become true? They are going to fight. They're trying to get them to fight. The UFC is trying to get Chandler versus McGregor. So like they could just make that statement true as a way to not create anger and confusion amongst the fans. But you don't just have no options. You have very limited options. I mean, do you understand from this standpoint? Those two are going to fight. If Conor ever fights again, he will be fighting Chandler, for sure. But we have no assurances that Conor's going to fight again, right? Like, this was today's news while drunk. 1 week ago, in a different country on somebody else's cameras, it was Manny Pacquiao. So next week, whatever the idea that comes to mind, right, it's one of these situations, but now you have the UFC who's been promised by their biggest star, if you come to T-Mobile on International Fight Week, specifically June 29th, you will be able to see me. You have confusion, and you can only stick a middle finger to your audience so many times. Conor does it nonstop. But that's the shtick. I've done it to you guys until I'm blue in the face, but that was been our agreement from the beginning. The UFC marketing team has never done it, and they never would, because they're professionals and they operate in a different dimension. But they are now finding themselves stuck. We have a match that we're told they want to make. We just know they haven't yet made it. And we have a confusion with our audience, and we allowed our biggest star to create that confusion, and we didn't try to correct it. Now, easiest for all of us is if the organization can just make it happen on that date. Less easy is coming out and explaining Conor's a liar. But those are your options. So, before you do any of them, and before you know a friend or you email a cousin who used to be an intern and he's still got relationships at the UFC, before you do any of those things, before you go and shout and throw eggs at Crowley's empty office, before you do anything like that, take a deep breath, tune back into me. When and if that fight happens, I will let you know when and where tickets go on sale, which currently has not happened. Conor is no more fighting Chandler in June than he's fighting Pacquiao in May. There's one voice, there's one bit of shred of integrity left in mixed martial arts, and you're staring at him. And when and if that date comes, I promise you, I will tell you.